this program. I would, the second part would be, having a Q&A with Shubhankar, where we get some real lowdown about what the program really is and how should you prepare and what should you expect. Okay, so let's get started. All right. So a little bit about the Red Pen. So, we are a higher education consulting company based out of Mumbai, but a very international team with consultants across Europe, US, Canada, Dubai, Singapore, India. And we help applicants, who want to pursue higher education across undergraduate and postgraduate degrees, boarding schools, early advising as to how to build your profile starting from high school for competitive undergraduate and postgraduate programs. These are some of the statistics, that you see on screen. And you can find more details about us at our website, www.theredpen.in. Okay, I would encourage you to go and check out our services. These are some of the statistics. 1 second. Okay, these are some of our some of the schools where we service MBA applicants. Primarily 95% of our applicant pool is our service for admissions consulting in the MBA service line, at least for top 15 to 16 programs in the US and about another 5 to 6 programs in Europe. These are some of our admits. I have not mentioned scholarships here, but that is a separate, I think, session altogether. So today what we're going to cover is, what is a deferred MBA? Who should consider this? It's for which applicant pool? What is the evaluation criteria which schools use to consider whether you should apply or not? What the application process sort of looks like? Schools which offer these programs, because it's a very small, bunch of schools, competitive programs which are offering these programs right now. Many of these universities, usually start off as a pilot by offering this program to their own, undergraduate students in their final year. And once it's successful, like Berkeley has did recently, once that's successful, they open it to other applicants around the world. Then we'll have a Q&A with Shubhankar, and we can also take some open questions if anyone in the audience has any. So what is a deferred MBA program, right? A deferred MBA program is exactly similar to a normal MBA, right? It is basically your admission to a normal daytime MBA program at a highly competitive business school. But it grants you pre-admission. It grants pre-admission to undergraduate students in their final year of study. It also grants pre-admission to postgraduate students in their final year of study only if you have gone straight from your undergraduate to your postgraduate without having any work experience in between. Let's say you finish your undergraduate and you graduate in the month of May, and in September you start your master's program, but you've not worked in between at all. Then you satisfy that condition, and if you're a postgrad student, you can apply in your final year of study as well. Also, while most MBA programs require 2 to 5 years of work experience before you actually apply and are eligible for admission, and a deferred MBA program gives you that advantage where you can secure your seat in a competitive MBA program in advance without any work experience. Now, how can you do that? We'll cover that in a bit as well. If admitted, you are required to find full-time employment for that 2 to 5 year period, depending on the schools that you're applying to, which means that you will spend the first 2 years working, first 2 to 5 years working in a field of your choice, and then the next, 2 years in that full-time MBA program. Now, why should you consider a deferred MBA program, right? Now, unlike medical school or law school, or let's say unlike medical or law, you do not need a business degree to practice business. So a business degree gives you a set of holistic skills which are beyond, just practicing business, decision-making skills, negotiation, things which can be useful in traditional career paths as well as non-traditional. When we say traditional career paths, I'm talking about banking or consulting for predominantly, but I'm also talking about fields like maybe operations management or HR, which are also increasingly leaning towards an MBA now because they want to understand the business more as they move out from their siloed roles and take on more executive roles within an organization. But there are very non-traditional career paths. Let's say you have an undergraduate degree in music, right? Now you are a musician, you're a composer, and you are doing this for a couple of years. Now, what do you do? Like, do you continue doing that for like 30 years of your life? Probably not. At some point, you probably feel that I want to share my art with the rest of the world. I want to start an institution, right? And now, how do I run the business side of this institution? How do I scale this? How do I use technology today to kind of scale my talents? You can be a doctor, and you may want to know as to how does the business side of working in a medical field really work. So these are some of the non-traditional paths which you could which help you kind of explore the deferred MBA a little early on. So I would encourage that if you are a student in an undergraduate student in your first or second year of study, you could start at least thinking about what a deferred MBA is and researching this, which will enable you, if you apply in your final year, it enables you to secure a seat. So while the seats in the class are definitely empty, there is only a small proportion of, I would say, Harvard, if I have to take the statistics of Harvard Business School, it's 1% of their total class size, which is reserved for a deferred MBA applicant pool, approximately. So it is a competitive pool that you're applying into. You need to have the academic chops, you need to have the profile, and we will get into profile building in a little while. But it gives you the option of securing your seat early on, and it gives you the freedom after your undergraduate to kind of pursue some non-traditional career paths, and then say that, okay, I have this experience, and I don't need to kind of focus on what my career path should be and compete in a traditional MBA pool. Okay. Finding your initial job, of course, is a lot easier if you're interviewing and you say, listen, I have an admit at MIT, Columbia, Wharton, then of course, that's going to be very attractive for employers. You can develop a network in your targeted career early on, and we'll chat with Shubhankar about this, but it's very interesting. The bullet points 3 and 4 on the slide. At the age of 2021, you have access to a highly professional network at a top business school. Having access to that network is huge. It makes wonders, to your career. Having that mentorship, those mentorship opportunities, those check-ins, and having that guidance at that early age. So I think is a huge plus of securing that seat ahead of time while you're going to start your program 2 to 4 years down the line, but you have access to that network and mentoring opportunities right there. Now, who should apply? I think we covered this. I would just repeat that the college seniors who want to secure an admit from a top business school, but who want to kind of explore, a couple of paths, different functions, industries before deciding what their ideal path should be, are ideal candidates for the deferred MBA program. Some programs like Harvard Business School's 2+2 program, they're very clear on their website, and they say that deferred MBA program is only for people pursuing. Students pursuing the non-traditional career paths. So if you are going to go into consulting and banking, possibly even family business, and you would be, an MBA would be a natural milestone on your career path, you would not, they would not necessarily encourage you to apply, for the deferred MBA program. They are trying, with this cohort, they are trying to capture that pool of applicant which is not going to think about an MBA going down the line. People who are going into a startup career, people who are moving into, I would say, not-for-profits, right? Social entrepreneurship. So these are people they would encourage to apply. People, like I said, who are pursuing arts. Now, I would consider them as well, to fall in this kind of pool. That being said, I would also say that, if you have any doubt as to am I eligible or not, always write to the school. Write to the school. There is an email address which is given on the website of every school for admissions. Write to them and get your doubts cleared. Do not think that, oh, I may not be eligible and maybe I should not apply. Now, evaluation criteria, like how does the application process basically look like? Now, this pyramid is exactly the same as it is for a regular daytime MBA or executive MBA or part-time MBA pool. I'll just cover that in brief. The bottom of the base of the pyramid is your academic potential. Let's be very clear about this. You need to have the academic chops. Schools are trying to tap into the best and the brightest at this early stage. They want to give you the freedom to pursue your, whatever career path you want after you secure your seat, but they do also want to know that you have a plan in place. And what's your plan? How do you plan to use those 2 years? A school like Columbia Business School actually asks in one of their essay questions that, how do you plan to use, make use of the Future Leaders program to kind of really to uplift your career. What are you going to do with that? Many other schools have the same SE topics that they have for full-time MBA programs. So you need to have the academic chops. Do consider taking the GMAT or the GRE early on. I would say in your second or third year itself, I think you should get that test out of the way. Even if you are like, I don't know if I will go for a deferred MBA, I would say just give the test. You are in that academic frame of mind, you're studying, you have the time, get the test done in the second or third year. And in the fourth year, you can think, third or fourth year, whichever is your final year, you can think as to, do I want to apply? Now, work experience, here's the interesting part. Now, you are in college. Now, where does work experience fit in? I would say that, I would encourage you to explore internships, research projects, anywhere where you can demonstrate impact in your field of study. What schools are looking for is a well-rounded, holistic profile. Do you know what the real world looks like, or are you like purely academic? So I would say pursue internships as far as this part of the application criteria is concerned. Think about your short-term and long-term goals. While at the cost of repeating myself, while you do have the freedom of pursuing, whatever you want after you secure your seat in the deferred MBA program, you need to show the school what your short-term and long-term goals are. What is it that you plan to do after your undergrad? You may be someone that, hey, I want to just explore. I want to have the freedom to explore 1, 2, 3 things, and then I want to come back, which is fine. But you need to have that thought very clear and some reflection going on there. Demonstrated leadership and extracurricular activities at college. There are many opportunities to get involved. You have to demonstrate yourself as a community citizen, someone who is using your talents to benefit the communities that you're engaged in, whether it's your college or your any other not-for-profit organizations that you're involved with. Extracurricular activities, if you're interested in anything, how are you creating an impact through them, not just doing it for yourself? And you're fit. When I talk about fit, this is very interesting. When people come to us and they want to apply for full-time MBA programs, we usually tell them, guys, don't apply to just all M7s. Every school is different, and try to think and research as to how one school is going to be different from the other. The interesting trend which I have noticed around in deferred MBA programs is people apply across all M7 programs. And they're like, let's apply to all, and it could probably meet all my needs, which is fine. So long as you've researched it and you are okay that 2 to 5 years down the line, when I go, I'm going to invest $150,000-$200,000 in 2 years of my life, along with an opportunity cost. That's totally fine. So do that research, at least, as to what program would fit my my need, and which school I feel very excited to kind of go to, right? This little red bar which is on the side, it gives you the application components. You need there's an application form which asks the length and breadth about who you are, and your undergrad degree and your institution, transcripts. There are essays. Many essays are common across, and I made a note when I was researching this that schools like Harvard, Wharton, MIT, or even Stanford have the same essays as the full-time MBA program. In fact, Stanford has the same essay across undergraduate and postgraduate as well. But some schools like Columbia have completely different essay topics. So, you may want to kind of find out what the essay topics are, because when you look at the essay topic, it tells you what is the school really looking for. And then you can think backwards as to, what is the information that you should be building on, right? There are letters of recommendation which are required, and we will cover that a bit more in our Q&A session. There is your resume, and if you do get selected, the interview is by invitation only. So you have an interview, and after you clear the interview, you receive an admit. Right. Now, these are the schools which offer a deferred MBA program. Very small, pool. All M7 programs offer the deferred MBA in the US. As you see, predominantly it is leaning very heavily towards the United States. Outside the M7, you have Yale, Darden, Rutgers. There is Haas as well, which is not on this list. Haas last year did a pilot, just for their own undergraduate students in the final year of study, and it was a success, and now they've opened it to everyone. But schools like Haas or Stanford have a very small class size already for the full-time MBA. It's like, so in turn the deferred MBA pool is going to be smaller than that, so again super competitive. I say in Europe and Indian School of Business in India also offer a version of the deferred MBA program. So, while this is generally termed as a deferred MBA, as you see, the program name in the middle column is very different. So, you may see this program and you'll be like, if I, let's say, read Kellogg Future Leaders, I would be like, maybe this is, for some executive, who's in their 40s and they need to go and get an executive education. And this is where, a lot of misinformation kind of comes in, and why many people don't even know about a deferred MBA program. So these programs are called by different names. They're termed differently by different business schools. But in essence, that's what the program is, granting you a pre-admission in your final year of study to secure your seat early on. Right? Now comes the interesting part. So I think, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So I think I was really looking forward to chatting with Shubhankar on this platform. I've spoken with him before. I have, all the answers, the questions that I'm going to ask, but I think everyone should really know this. So Shubhankar, I'm just going to have you just briefly introduce yourself, and then I will just start rattling off questions.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Preeti. Hello, everyone. Really lovely to be with all of you this afternoon. I'm Shubhankar Mihir Seth. I am currently a business analyst with McKinsey, graduated from IIT Bombay with a degree in mechanical engineering back in 2020. I was admitted to a few schools with deferred MBA programs, and I think it's an amazing value proposition that everybody should go in for, and we'll cover more about that in just a bit. But really excited to hear your questions.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Shubhankar. Okay, so now let's start off with the basics, right? Now, not many students know about the deferred MBA program. So, when did you first learn about this, and what did your initial research look like?
Sure. So I think my first exposure to the deferred MBA programs was when a senior of mine from college was admitted to the HBS 2+2. And I think HBS 2+2 is perhaps the oldest running deferred MBA program. A lot of these other programs that we just saw are far more recent additions. In fact, we were very fortunate, in fact, the batch of 2020 that way, that before our batch, it was just Columbia, Stanford, and HBS who offered this. A lot of schools, including Wharton, where I plan to join, only opened it up in 2020. So I only knew about HBS, but I was still very enthusiastic about applying. Of course, never really, did a lot of research, at least in my second or third year, about how to go about the process. But I think it was at the beginning of my fourth year that I began to reach out to alumni who had, who had pursued MBA degrees in the US. And that's the more people I spoke to, the more I realized that there was a tremendous advantage that could be yours if I went through with the process. So my initial research, I think, was primarily just talking to folks and understanding what kind of gains I could personally have from an MBA program.
Great. And around what time did you start your preparation for the application?
So, I would maybe split this into two bits, Preeti. One very essential component that I think is largely disjointed from the rest of the application process is your standardized testing, which, like we just discussed, is a very crucial component. Fortunately, I had a chance to appear for the GMAT back in my second year. I was helping someone else prepare and just decided and went through with it. So the advantage that I had was that in my final year, I already had my scores locked and loaded. Those were the same scores that I applied with. However, I think when it comes to really beginning work on my applications, I started somewhere in September or October 2019, about 6 months in advance of when I was supposed to submit my applications. And of course, it takes a while, I think, to get the initial drafts in place, to get a sense of what all the different schools need. You need to talk to your recommenders, etc. So I don't think, there's anything that's, too early. The earlier you can start, the better. Even, it also gives you a chance to identify if there are some gaps in your profile, work on them. If you do that, if you do it very last minute, then it's just a cover up exercise.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a golden piece of advice, and that is something I even tell all regular MBA students. Please start early. You can, you know, it can never be too early. You can never be too early. So always start early. That's great. And I think you answered, a part of the question which we just got in with, that is GRE and GMAT needed or is it optional? So it is needed. It's none of these schools or programs as are test optional. So get the test out of the way first. I think this is great, and I think I would like to repeat what Shubhankar said, that talk to people, find out who are the people who have done this before, and talk to them. Which is why we have Shubhankar here, of course, because I could tell you everything about what you need to do, but having hear it from someone who's already gone through this is just brilliant. Now, Shubhankar, how did you develop your profile towards an M7 MBA application? Yeah, and I want you to kind of give us things which are not on any website or any blog article. How did you consciously work towards building a profile, or were you like, I will work with what I have?
I think that question is slightly tough to answer. I would say it was a mix of both things. Of course, I wasn't doing everything that I did in college with the mindset that okay, this will help me in my application. But I would say that that was definitely a motivating push for a lot of decisions that I took. Excuse me. So I think very broadly, there are some components that are fairly standard, and those are things that in general will help you and will also help you in the application process, right? So maintaining a solid academic track record is something that you might want to invest in right from the first year of college, because that is something that will benefit you everywhere. Similarly, on a parallel front, something that people don't think in about a lot in advance is your recommendations. As a college student, sorry, as a college student, it's highly likely that you will turn to one of your professors, or say a dean or somebody, for your academic recommendation. And as a result, it's important that you invest in having a relationship with them. Your recommender is not just somebody who knows you, or has been a teacher or something. They're champions of your application, essentially. So they should be somebody you work closely with, who appreciate what you bring to the table and are willing to invest time and effort into your application process, to really ensuring that you get there. So I think that kind of relationship takes some work. In addition to that, I feel a well-rounded experience professionally, at least for B schools, is critical. So even though you might have pursued some academic projects, etc., some real-world experience in terms of internships, and in a field that's largely perceived, that's not too technical, something that's more professionally oriented, is something that you should definitely look to do. And of course, it's best if all of those things align together to come together in your storyline. But otherwise, you should also really think about what your narrative to the school is going to be. And of course, I don't expect anyone to have a concrete answer even before they start, but it shouldn't be that you're doing a lot of disjointed things. It's always easier to build on things that have a natural flow to them. So that is something you can look to do. But I think bigger than all of this, right, is the kind of impact you bring to the table. So even underlying the professional experience, even underlying say an academic project that you undertook, or the fact that you led a club or a board in your university. It is really about how you can highlight the initiative that you took, about how you solved for problems that were larger than your own, how you really created tangible impact that benefited an institution or that benefited an organization or even specific people. I think that is where you should focus your energies, because those are the stories that really tell the AdCom, who you are, what kind of impact you bring to the table. So essentially, I would say that, don't tailor all your experiences just for an application process, but within whatever experience you're having, just focus on understanding where it is that you can leave a mark.
Yeah, I think those are some very wise words, Shivankar. There's one question I'm going to answer, before I ask you the next question. Now, we always get asked this question that, if I apply to a deferred MBA program or a bunch of deferred MBA programs and I get rejected, can I still, a couple of years down the line, apply to the regular daytime MBA program? And will that be viewed negatively against me that I have been rejected by this program once? So the answer to the first question is yes. Even if you're rejected at a deferred MBA program, you can still apply a couple of years down the line in the regular traditional daytime MBA program. And the answer to the second part is no, you will not be viewed negatively. We have worked with someone who had applied to HBS 2+2 deferred MBA a couple of years back, HBS to Harvard Business School, and was rejected. And this year he has received an admit in the regular daytime MBA program at HBS. Okay, so that's a live example over them. So that's not going to be held against you. All right. Now, what were the top 3 challenges, Shivankar, you faced while navigating the MBA application process?
Right. I think the biggest one on top of my head, Preeti, was the lack of precedence, information availability, where there were very, very few people, or at least that I knew of, who had applied to these programs, who had, experience in what a crafting an application could look like for a college student, how to go about the interview process, how all of these things might be different. And as a result, I feel, that information asymmetry with the full-time MBA program was definitely a hurdle at the outset. The second challenge that I feel as a full-time student is really trying to understand your storyline, right? Because when you write your applications and you tell the school what you intend to do and how you intend to leverage the platform that they provide, you will need to get into specifics about what resources you're keen on, about what kind of future career paths you're looking at. And with for someone who's not had any full-time experience till that, crafting a convincing narrative there can be extremely difficult. And the third thing is, I think, which was a bit of a struggle for me, was that, when you look online and you see applications to the full-time MBA program, you see mock interviews that people have done, you speak to them, is that you feel that, as a college student, you've not had as impactful experiences or as powerful stories to tell that match up to a full-time MBA candidate's profile. And I think that was something that scared me in the beginning, because I wasn't sure that the stories that, say, I wanted to share in the interview were really that impactful. But then I realized that, the adcoms also take that lens, that you are a full-time college student. It's not like you would have run $1 million company or created a program that helped thousands of people. Of course, if you've done that, that's amazing, but that's really not the expectation. So I think setting the bar too high in my own head, feeling that this was something unattainable and only people who've done some miraculous wonders in undergrad can go through, was the third challenge.
Okay, great. It's interesting that you say that. I'm actually reading a book by Adam Grant, which says that, how we sometimes just undervalue ourselves and miss out on opportunities. And I remember when we first saw your resume, we were like, okay, this person is a rock star. So see how that changes, right? I mean, you feel that, oh my God, I might have done enough. And for someone else, you're like, yes, of course, you're right up there. All right, great. Now, we touched upon, you briefly touched upon recommenders, right? Who can you use as your recommenders? Of course, professors is a no-brainer, and I'm glad you said that you need to kind of have that relationship, and your professor think that you are someone I can write a recommendation for.
Yeah.
Who else apart from professors?
So, very tactically speaking, Preeti, I think most schools have a requirement that you must have a professional LOR. I think that is true across the board. Even for schools like Kellogg and Columbia, who only ask for one recommendation, their only clause is that this must be a professional recommendation with somebody that you worked on, in a formal environment. So any internship, even if it was say an internship at a lab or an R&D internship, or of course a more traditional internship with a consulting firm, a banking firm, or a software company, your immediate supervisor there is one of your best bets for uh, for a recommendation. And also you should look at this from a school's perspective, right? They are betting on you to succeed in a professional environment when you've not really spent any time there. So if you can get someone who can vouch for your ability to do well in such an environment, that is a huge plus. And again here, I think it's also important to keep in mind, right, that if you were an intern, even let's say, some very prestigious firm, it's unlikely that the vice president or the managing director is somebody that you work closely with. So my general advice here would be to not chase the title of the recommender. In fact, if it's somebody, just who's your immediate supervisor, who interacted very closely with you and can speak about your working style, that is your best bet. They are not really looking for somebody very high up in the organization. This is the most straightforward one and something that you will have to invest in. That's why I wanted to cover it first. The second recommendation is really up to you in a lot of ways. It can be a second professional recommendation. And the only thing here is that I wouldn't recommend using two from the same organization, but if you've done multiple internships, etc., it's a good idea to even get two recommendations. Of course, another more natural choice that most people feel familiar with is to get an academic recommendation from a professor, somebody who's taught you in a classroom environment or you've done a project with, so on and so forth. Now, just one quick caveat here. No school except for MIT Sloan insists on an academic recommendation. Sloan is very clear. They want one professional plus one academic recommendation. Other than that, it's really up to you. So this is, the professional and the academic front. Of course, if you've been a leader in extracurriculars, if you run your own club, etc., then if there are faculty members from your university who are responsible or are faculty advisors to that club, that organization, you can do that. So I used to run the student mentorship program at IIT Bombay. My recommender for almost 50% of the programs was the faculty chair for the student mentorship program. And I worked closely with him to get those recommendations in place. I know a very dear friend who was a national level badminton player and did inter-university championships, and he got his badminton coach to write a recommendation letter. So of course, I wouldn't say that it's very hard and fast about who you can leverage, but of course, it just should meet the basic criteria that the person should be an unequivocal champion of your candidature. It just can't be a very standard kind of recommendation that they could have written for anybody. It needs to be deeply personal. It needs to show how they really rate you very highly across the board on all parameters. And in fact, a recommendation, at least with professors, Preeti, I struggled because they're used to writing, the professors from IIT Bombay are used to writing very technical recommendations for MS and PhD programs. Then a B school recommendation is very qualitative. You need to get into a lot of examples to substantiate, okay, this is how he reacted, this is how he took feedback, etc. So I think it's a lot of investment that goes into getting an academician to write a B school LOR.
Okay, so this is very useful, I think, and you covered some really key points which we use for the daytime MBA program as well. I just want to share with everyone that the letters of recommendation are the least looked after aspect in an MBA application. Everyone focuses on the essays. But the interesting part is that it takes time, like Shubhankar said, that you have to have that chat with your recommender. They have to know what is it that they are expected to write. So they have to think through that. You have to work with them, so that they don't write something which is in complete contravention to what you're writing in your application. Maybe you've told them that oh, I intend to pursue a PhD, but that's not you're writing in your MBA application, so they cannot write that. So that's an important aspect. Also, MBA recommenders, right? They get a link from the school, and they need to fill that recommendation and then send it at the same time or before the school deadline. So we've always seen that people wake up at the last minute and trying to rush their letters of recommendation, and then they keep pressurizing the recommender to kind of just submit it before the deadline, and that's not the most ideal thing to do. So yeah, start having those discussions early. Now we have a question which I think I was just talking about identifying your fit. Now we have a question here: what is the difference among all the deferred MBA programs? Do certain schools have certain USPs, right? Now Shubhankar, you have admits to 4 schools. You have Booth, Wharton, Kellogg, and MIT. How did you choose?
I think this was the toughest part of the entire journey, even more than the entire application process. I think every school, and this is something that all of you will come across when you're doing your research, has something very distinctive to offer, right? And this is not to say that a school is, good in one domain or weak in one domain. They're all generally they good across the board. So, a lot of notions that I had coming into the application process were systematically deconstructed. In my head, Wharton was a finance school. In my head, Kellogg was a marketing school. Uh, all of this, and Stanford and MIT were, for people with tech backgrounds, and all of this, of course, it might have been true, say, sometime back, but these schools have really diversified. And now, for example, Wharton is fantastic even for those who want to do entrepreneurship. They're setting up a huge tangent center. They're really investing resources in getting some of the best professors on board on the subject. So, I would say that it's not like it's going to make a sea of a difference anywhere. But culturally, I think, different schools uh, do things differently. And as far as my own decision making process is concerned, right, I think the two schools in my head that were really tough to choose between were MIT Sloan and Wharton. Now, MIT, of course, for an engineer is dreamland, and I was really, really excited. I've always, even when I was not sure about getting an MBA, I was really interested in MIT's engineering programs as well. And the entire focus on tech and just bringing innovation into everything you do was something that really, excited me about MIT. And that kind of translates into all of their academic offerings as well, right? That they have action labs where you really go out and test the theory that you've learned in different kinds of social challenges. Um, the entire way their application is constructed, right? They're just making it very clear that they want people who are fearlessly authentic, who are just looking to create, and who are excited by problems instead of at being excited by brands, etc. They're excited by problems. I think that was one of the most unique propositions. Even when I spoke to the students there, I think it had a whole different quirky kind of a vibe where people were just interested in figuring out where the next big challenge lies across the globe, whether it's in tech or finance, etc. So, and that was the underlying theme. Why I still decided to go ahead with Wharton were more practical considerations. So, of course, I think as far as a network in the finance industry, especially in impact finance or sustainable finance, where I want to go, Wharton had both a a very strong network in terms of the academic links, as well as in terms of the alumni base. So that was terrific. The second thing was that I, at least in my head, was clear that I want to come back to India post my MBA. And Wharton has a tremendous network in India. That was one of the biggest considerations that I had. And thirdly, there were specific offerings around entrepreneurship, like I just mentioned, that I was particularly interested in exploring. So these three reasons broadly formed the basis of what I wanted, why I picked these schools. Um, Yeah, I think those are some of the factors in my head.
Great. I think you articulated them extremely well, Shivankar. And I would just like to reiterate one thing, that when you're researching schools, you have to take the school research aspect very clearly. If you want to make the most of your investment and you're investing, an upwards of 150 to $200,000 in those 2 years, along with the opportunity cost of not having a job and not earning anything except for those internships in between. But you really need to research well. And I always encourage everyone to keep a Word document or an Excel file with multiple tabs for each school, and attend events, talk to students, and make notes. Do not rely on your brain and your memory to kind of, just have everything amazing and just, pop out something when you just need that piece of information. Document your research. It'll help you arrive at decisions in a more, I would say, structured and a methodical way, and you'll be convinced. And since you brought up, the MIT Sloan, I did want to share that we were going to have one more panelist. He's not with us here, but we worked with him last year, and he went to MIT Sloan. He also got admits to Wharton, Kellogg, Booth, MIT, and Yale. But when he applied, he was clear. He's like, I just want to go to MIT. So I think great worked out for him as well. And MIT Sloan, I agree with you. It has a very action learning focus.
Yeah.
The whole pitch, to every MBA school tries to differentiate itself, and MIT's pitch is that they're an action learning program. So you need to kind of, if you're someone who's comfortable getting uncomfortable, diving your hands into problems and get extremely excited about it, MIT is the place to go. But like Stanford, MIT also has a very small class size. So if you're thinking about the daytime MBA program, again, you have to really research as to what is this program going to do for me? How can I contribute to the community? And can I be successful over here? Are we like a good match for each other? Now I just want to touch upon briefly that, the MIM program is a master's in management program, a postgraduate program, of course, which is an alternative to a daytime MBA. It is for people who do not have experience. Now, there are schools like, if you're looking at University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, they in fact can go straight into an MBA, I think. And even if I'm not, okay, I don't know if it's Booth, I think it's Stanford. Stanford, I think you can go straight into the MBA right after your undergrad. You have that option. And so why would someone from the undergrad jump straight into an MBA? And then why would someone apply to a deferred MBA program and not just do an MIM? Shivankar, you had shared that you get this question from a few quarters. So do you want to kind of help me answer that?
Yeah, I'm sure. I think it's a very valid, and from an outside-in perspective, I can see why it might be a little different to distinguish. But that's what I tell most folks who ask me this question, that in my head, these are two entirely different ball games. And I'll tell you just why in a uh, very quick fashion, right? The first thing is that you, even when you decide to get an MBA, right? Of course, there are certain exceptions with people who go directly from an undergrad into an MBA degree. These are usually people who run their own startups or have extensive experience in their family business. However, most people, and that you can look at the average work experience in the class, it's almost always upwards of 5 years. An MBA is for people with a little bit of a professional background, at least 2 to 5 years, as compared to an MIM where the average work experience in the class is usually under a year. And this, of course, reflects in the eventual outcomes, right? And an MBA, whether you go through the deferred route or you go through the regular route, the degree you get is the same, and you will eventually end up at a mid-career management kind of a role, which is far more senior, both in terms of the position and in terms of the pay benefits, etc., to the entry level options that you get post an MIM degree. You, with after an MIM degree, you get the exposure to a lot of very high brand name IBs, consulting firms, etc., but you will be offered entry level positions. In general, in terms of the program itself, right, the curricular intensity is much higher in an MBA program. Correspondingly, the time and money that is invested is also higher. Most MBA programs are 2 years, cost upwards of 150K USD. Most MIM programs are about half the time and half the price, if that's something that you're looking at. In general, the global brand and the mobility that you get from an MBA is again higher as compared to an MIM program. So of course, the MBA programs are also more selective, and as a result, I feel like the application rigor is higher in a deferred MBA or a regular MBA program. But you should only be considering an MIM if you don't feel that you are getting a job that you feel you have the potential for, or you don't have the right exposure to get the job that you want right out of undergrad. If you are happy with the job plan, with the career prospects that you have, there is no reason to get an MIM over a deferred MBA.
Okay. All right. Another question I have for you is, let's look at the MBA application essays. How did you differentiate your stories across multiple business school applications?
Right. I think the differentiation is very, very subtle. Of course, you have the same broad goals that you keep in mind when you're writing the application. Your background stories are the same. However, I think one useful thing to keep in mind is that the one part that stays consistent is how you're standing out from other people with similar backgrounds. But what you also need to focus on parallelly is that while you're standing out from your peers, you have to convince the outcome that you will fit right in with the rest of their class. So the fit is what gets tailored in every application essay, I feel, right? And of course, demonstrating that fit is something that comes from both ends. At one end, it comes from showing the qualities that you have, or from showing the values that matter to you, and showing what you took away from an experience. Right now, at a very from a very high level discussion point of view, right, if I talked about my experience interning with LEK Consulting for my MIT essay and for my Columbia essay. Now, Columbia, I spoke to a lot of alums, and the one thing that came up repeatedly was how the school, just like the city it is in, is all about resilience, about just pushing back, just always rising to the challenge, never letting go. So I think from the same LEK experience, I picked up a story of my resilience, of how we were able to get a client back on board after things had gone haywire. Won't get into the details, but it was a story of resilience primarily. The same story, when I talked about it in my MIT application, I looked at it from an innovation standpoint, that okay, we were faced with this challenge, but there was none of the standard ways were working out. So that's when we decided to think out of the box and develop this entirely new model to develop our recommendation. So that is one aspect as far as that goes. And of course, when you talk about the school and you're demonstrating what about the school appeals to you, then again you stress on the resources that the school is proud of. You stress on the facts or the cultural fit that make you feel that you both of them, that you will be the right fit for the school and the school will be the right fit for you. I think it's just very important to keep in mind that fit works both ways, and that is something that should come out in the application.
Yeah, I think this is a great point. How to kind of demonstrate your fit in these essays. And I keep telling this to everyone: MBA application essays are not about some bombastic, flowery language and some amazing writing. It's about storytelling. Can you craft a narrative and demonstrate the fit? Right? If you can, how you tell that story, the same story with a different lens, is very important. I want to share with everyone that at the Red Pen, this is what we do. We do have pre-writing exercises prior to you writing essays. We do something called as star stories, where we identify personal and professional stories which you can then use in your application. So that thinking needs to go before, rather than just saying, oh, this is the essay topic, let me just start writing. So it does need a bit of reflection, some bit of self-awareness, going in and to identify, okay, this is a project I can talk about, or this is a project which is probably not very great for adcoms. I also want to share that when you're an Indian international applicant, the pool size is very large. Indians apply in huge numbers, whether it's a deferred MBA or whether it is, the regular daytime MBA. Separating yourself from, your competition, like Shivankar said, you have to separate yourself, you have to have differentiators, yet you have to fit it right into the school's ethos. That differentiation is very important. I feel that, if every third Indian is going to write about, how their grandparents influenced them, or, how they have played cricket in school, it's not going to help, right? It's not going to help. Now we have two questions here. Now, do deferred MBA programs give scholarship? I'll answer the first part, based on what I know, and then Shubhankar, you can pitch in. From what I understand, that yes, deferred MBA programs do give scholarships, but I think you have to apply for scholarships in the year that you actually attend. So they can look at your assess your financial needs based on the last 2-3 years of, let's say you've gone into not-for-profit and you're like, my post MBA goals are going into not-for-profit again, and going to social entrepreneurship, maybe I need this. Then they will assess it, I think, based on that. Kellogg, I think, does consider it early in the process, but I think these are things that you have to check with schools. Harvard Business School, for example, is they only provide need-based scholarships, no brainer, no merit-based scholarship. Everyone is going to Harvard on their merit. That's, I think, what information which I have about scholarships at deferred MBA programs. Shivankar, is there something that you can share here?
No, I think you are absolutely right, Preeti. And all deferred MBA programs will consider you for scholarship. Of course, you do not know that when you get the admit. The admission offer does not contain any details of the scholarship, but they make it very clear that the year that you decide to matriculate, they will process your application again, look at what you've achieved over the past 4 years for the merit-based scholarships, look at what your needs and plans are, and accordingly award you a scholarship that they feel is right. And very quickly, some programs like Kellogg, for the entire
Shivankar? Okay, let's wait for Shivankar to get back. I will just answer the next question which we have, which is, do internships done along with undergraduate course accrue to the work experience? Yes, they do. The criteria for admission to the deferred MBA specifies 2 years of work experience. Is this expected to be full-time job after undergraduation? Yes, that is correct. It's expected that you're full-time, that you're working full-time after your undergraduate. So many a times what I advise, potential applicants to deferred MBA programs is, secure, when you're applying for the program, secure a job, in, let's say by about, hi Shivankar. So I think, let me just take this question and then we'll jump right back into the scholarships piece. So, many a times I tell applicants that, secure that job at the time that you're applying, start looking for applying to jobs, full-time jobs post your undergrad, around the time that you're going to apply to your internship. And if you are able to, put in your application and tell business schools that I have a job with this and this and this, and this is what I'm going to do, that, gives more weightage to your application. So, so yes, you should you're not only expected to have a full-time job after you go into, post your undergrad final year, but having that job at the time of application and specifying that to admissions committee actually, gives a lot of weightage to your application. All right, Shivankar, let's jump back to the scholarship, the financing question that you were answering.
Yeah, I don't know where exactly I got cut off, but I think very quickly, again, to repeat, you, except for Kellogg, you don't get any scholarship when you get your offer letter. You will be given an equal shot as the regular applicants for that year when you decide to matriculate. That is when they will process your offer. And even with Kellogg, I think it's not an applicant specific deal. It's just that they give $20,000 of the application fee to everybody who gets admitted through the Future Leaders program.
Okay, brilliant. Now I do have questions, and I think we are about an hour into this. So let me cover some of the more important ones. Are there any tips for GMAT prep? And I'll combine this question. Do you recommend taking the GRE over the GMAT?
Okay. I think, yeah, that's a very good question. The GRE and the GMAT are, like we just discussed, both taking either of them is mandatory. However, I don't think there is any inherent preference by the school towards either of these. I've chatted with my cohorts from the different schools that I was admitted to, and I think, of course, while a majority of the people take the GMAT, there was a significant number of those who took the GRE as well. Choosing between the two is something that is a very, very personalized call, I feel. And that, of course, both scores are valid for 5 years, both are graded on a curve, both are computer adaptive. That part is entirely consistent. But if you're, say, looking to apply to other programs outside of business schools as well, the GRE is a more handy score because it is more universally accepted. GMAT is specifically for B schools. However, there are lots of differences even within the testing pattern. Now, the GRE is more vocabulary based, at least the verbal part. The GMAT is more grammar based. Similarly, the quant is slightly tougher on the GMAT. You can't use calculators in the GMAT, you can on the GRE. And I think those are broadly the differences. What you choose is entirely up to you. So I can tell you, like, a lot of folks that I know took the GRE preferentially because the GRE allows you to come back to questions. You don't have to answer it right there. This is unlike the GMAT where you must answer the question before you move on. So you can't be spending too much time on a question. There's no option to come back to it later. So these kind of choices really make it a very individual call on what you decide to do. I would suggest taking a mock of each. There are 3 bar mocks available freely from almost all testing websites. See which, what feel you like more, and then go ahead with that. On how to prepare, I think that's a whole different session in itself. But very quickly, give yourself ample time. Make sure you solve the official guide that GMAT offers cover to cover. And my simple rule is that if you spend an hour attempting questions, you should also spend an hour analyzing them. Which were the ones that you got wrong? What are some of the recurring mistakes that you're making? Most importantly, it's a timed game. So which are the questions that are taking you a lot of time to answer? Once you get the hang of this, just appear for as many mock tests as you can. There are enough very close to, well, in fact, GMAT itself offers past questions through official mock tests on their website, which you can purchase. I think getting about 5, 6 good mock tests under your belt is very crucial to do well on the exam day.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm not the test prep expert, but I always say that what I know about the GMAT is it's not a test of math or English. It's a test of executive reasoning. If you're going to spend 4 minutes on a question, you're done. So I think sometimes the question may be completely wrong, and they're just trying to test whether you can make an executive decision under a minute, and can you move on. All right. Now, the last question is, what does the business school interview process look like? And my question to you specifically is, did you interview at all 4 programs before deciding on what, of course, but how was each of them like different from the other?
Right. I think very quickly, the interview was a fundamental shift from all other interviews I had ever appeared for till date, because in none of the schools was it a very grilling interview, right? I think at least for the MBA programs, and Preeti, maybe you can clarify if this is true even for the full-time MBA programs, you feel like it is a conversation to get to know you better. It is not intended, or at least doesn't come across as severely evaluative in any sense. And I think that was one of the main reasons why I really enjoyed the interview process a lot. It was just an opportunity to really highlight some parts of the application, some parts of me to an evaluator, that I really wanted to bring across, and even also touch on some things that perhaps I hadn't mentioned in my application. So I would think that, the interviews broadly across the school were largely consistent, all consisting of 4 broad themes. However, of course, some schools paid a greater focus to one theme than the other. I think The four broad themes are, you know, your background. So questions about, you know, what your background is, where you've come from, what are some of the past experiences you've had, the challenges you faced, the values that motivate you, where they come from. All of this is one aspect. The second aspect is where you want to go. So what are your plans? What is your long-term career? How does B school fit in? The third aspect is, I think, more school specific, which is, you know, why do you want to come to this school, what stands out, etc., etc. And the fourth aspect, you know, these three are aspects you've largely covered in your application, so you should be in a good position to walk them through. The fourth slightly trickier aspect is the behavioral questions, which is, I think, where most of the schools spend a lot of time. And this is where they really expect you to convey short stories of times where you've created impact, faced challenges, motivated teams, innovated, pushed back, etc. You know, almost essentially all places where you've either created an impact or stepped out of your comfort zone. And I think that storytelling is a incredibly crucial aspect of the entire interview process, because I feel that's the only thing the interviewers walk away with. That's the only thing they remember. They're interviewing so many people, that, you know, it's the stories that really stick. And I think you really need to work on getting those stories right. It sounds easy, but like delivering the context, the, you know, the target, what you decided to do, the what you did, and the result in a 2 minute time frame, which is, you know, the ideal attention span, that is a tough ask and needs a lot of prep.
Yes, I agree. And I always, when I do mock interviews, I always say, guys, please keep your answers under 2 minutes because otherwise I'm losing you. And I think that was very useful. And I think practicing for those interviews is also very important to I always say that, write down answers to some commonly asked questions. That's my interview tip, at least for those who are preparing for even regular business school interviews or the deferred MBA interviews. Write down answers because you don't want to be thinking in the interview. You should have done the thinking before, and in the interview, maybe you just want to be thoughtful about giving context and sharing your story in the most impactful manner. Like, how do you deliver, right? So I think this was great. And Shubhankar, honestly, I think the kind of things you said is very useful even for daytime MBA programs. I wish I could chat with you longer. I could ask you more questions about more specifics, which but anyway, I think we are at time. So any last piece of advice for anyone? I do want to share before you say that is the reason why we're doing this webinar right now is deferred MBA deadlines are coming up in March and April. If you are in your final year of undergrad study, if you want to reach out to us, just Google us, the Red Pen or www.theredpen.in, or reach out to me. My name is right there up on the screen. You can just Google my name. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions even after this webinar, or you're watching this recording after the webinar has taken place, do reach out to me and I'm happy to answer that, because the deadlines are coming up in March and April. But I must say that you should have taken the test by now. So any last piece of advice, last words final words of advice for students who are appearing now in applying now in the next 3 months?
No, I think, just trust yourself, trust the process, and go ahead. I think this is an absolute no-brainer. If you think at some point of time you might need a business school education or you might want an MBA degree, this is the time to do it. I cannot stress it enough that this is a no regret move. You have to invest this time. You'll only regret it if you don't do it.
Great. I love that. No one wants to look back and say, I should have applied. Maybe I had, a small chance of getting it. All right, great. I think thank you so much, Shubhankar, for spending this Saturday, morning with me. I know you've had a crazy week, but thanks a lot for sharing your time, and thanks to everyone who turned up.
My pleasure. Have a good day,
Bye.
everyone.